Welcome to Syntax. Today, we have Topher Martini on the show, a former engineering program manager at Apple. Topher started at Apple all the way back in 2001 as a tester working on the Mac, iPod, iPhone, iPad, all the stuff, right? All the i stuff. Topher's career has taken him to wild places in 23 years, like spatial computing, self-driving cars, light field cameras, and even the original iPhone. So we've been wanting to have Topher on the show for a long time, and now that he's on sabbatical, it seemed like the perfect time. So welcome to Syntax, Topher.
Thank you very much. So excited to be here, and nice to make the connection with you, Wes, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're talking about career stuff here, but am I allowed to ask what working on the first iPhone was like? Can I go off plan already?
Sure. I mean, enjoy the ride. It's interesting. I think we're broad strokes paint, like working at a company like Apple is, for a lot of people, it's kind of that hallmark in their career, the benchmark that they aspire to. And having, worked at Apple for over 15 years, it's a truly unique experience. And I think, more so than the products, it's really the teams that have shined. And so working on amazing products like iPhone, granted, I had a very small role and, as a tester in a very large product ecosystem, but, the ability to work with amazing teams is really kind of the differentiator in seeing how amazing products are built. It's interesting in retrospect, it was so exciting to deliver a product like that. But many years later, you think about like, man, am I addicted to the phone in my pocket? It's almost not like buyer's remorse or developer's remorse, but like when you have the longevity in your career to look back on certain things, like did that move the needle for everybody? For me, kind of in the later stages of my career, one of the areas I've been really excited about is helping people navigate, the kind of iceberg field that can be career development. So having worked on amazing technologies and different products and everything, it's been a really great capstone. But beneath it all is really, I can look back and say, that was a truly amazing team that did that work. Or more recently, working on Vision Pro and Reality Kit, amazing, exceptional teams. And it's always hard to say goodbye when it's time for you to move on. But those are some of the things you navigate to do the right thing for you in your own career cycle.
It's funny that you mentioned Vision Pro. When we first met, you were not able to tell me what you did at Apple. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, I bet it's a headset. And at one point, I think Topher showed up in the, what's now the Syntax Discord, and people were talking about VR headsets, and he was asking people what they thought about the Sony headset or one of the headsets, the Quest that just came out. And I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely the headset. He's coming in here asking about headsets. So it's really cool to be able to chat with you across the release of that product, because it was like went from being something that you couldn't even mention, you couldn't even describe to something that's real and out there, something that I own and really enjoy. But like, that's a huge project in general. And I mean, when you started at Apple, 2001, that was the year the first iPod was released.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, what was it like being at Apple for the iPod release? Was there like, because I know it wasn't until like the third one that it really caught on.
Yeah, iPod was a truly unique product at the time. Apple was a computer company. My role was working on storage technologies and the underlying NAND storage that was inside and hard drive for the first model. But so very small role again, but looking back on how, that was a pivotal moment for the company. It was Apple Computer Incorporated, no consumer electronics. And so looking at, the whole industry shifted too. You had your Rios, Zune came out a little bit later that everybody likes to poke out a little bit, but having a great technology does not make a great product. And the ones that resonate over time, are just fundamentally different. It's interesting now, kind of later, I have people who weren't even alive when the iPod was out in 2001 that I work with. And it's like, oh, welcome, intern. And, it's so it's always interesting to see kind of, the complexion of how things change as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was in high school when it came out. So for me, I remember the first time I saw one, and the thing I thought was cool about it, beyond just having like a little hard drive in there, was like some kid in my class was playing Breakout on it, like the little Breakout game. And I was like, this thing got Breakout? Oh man. Yeah. It was so novel to me. Yeah, totally.
It's true though. Like that was so long ago. I saw somebody the other day that had kids and their name was Aiden. And I was like, there's Aidens that have kids already, like wild. Yeah. It's people are growing up.
Yeah. So you arrived at Apple like really early on in your career, right? How did that transpire? Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah. So I actually was transferring colleges. I grew up in California, Bay Area native, and had actually gone to University of Denver for my freshman year of college, and effectively dropped out and found, CSU, Monterey Bay. And the goal was, I'm going to finish school and I'm going to get a job. And, luckily through Worldwide Developer Conference, I landed an internship at Apple in 2001. And at the conference, basically got an on the spot job offer, which was really exciting and kind of, wildest dreams. Like never could have forecasted that could have happened. When you're an intern, you're obviously a low person on the totem pole. And, I was just hungry for it all. Of working late nights, all the things that you're really fueled by in the flow, all those different areas, working with a great team and on the product. It was an awesome ride, ended up graduating early and was extended a full-time offer. It's interesting to see too of Apple in 2001 and tech in 2001 was a very existential moment. People didn't know if big companies were going to be around, and several of them are not. And so, it's interesting when looking at kind of your role within the company, but also, is the ship I'm sailing on going to make it to shore, or is it going to, how's that going to fare?
Yeah, I guess in 2001, like we said, pre-iPod, pre-iPhone. I mean, Apple was certainly not the company. Granted, I had an iMac G4 in 2004 was my first. I guess I had an iPad or an iPod first, but I think those are like my first real forays into using Apple full time as a professional, even at that point, the high school student. But so it definitely was probably a different landscape. But like you have that opportunity to talk with Apple. You are currently in school. How does somebody land something like that? Like, is there anything that you did to make yourself stand out in a special way, or did you have just the creds that they couldn't deny?
The landscape then and the landscape now is very different. But back then, it was really kind of the hunger and the desire to learn. There were a lot of different storage technologies at the time. And that was kind of the team I ended up working on was storage technologies. So, the fact that I knew DVD authoring, which was incredibly rare at the time, and other aspects were kind of the foothold into, hey, why does an intern know about DVD mastering technology? It was so. Full disclosure, I mean, I was a college kid. Piracy was a non-zero part of that. So, and that grows. And I think, not having a preconceived notion of what an internship should be, if anything, I felt like completely underqualified when, I knew maybe Bash and Perl at the time, but, week one, here's someone learning Objective-C and developing application. Like you feel just completely outclassed from day one. And that defeatist kind of mentality can really jump in quick when you're early in your career and especially as an intern. So, moving away from that and how to how do you make value for the team? Like there's no shortage of problems to solve at any, sizable company. And so that was kind of the accelerating factor of where is it we're spending a lot of our time? And there was kind of the first hockey stick moment in my career was, we spent an insane amount of time just getting systems ready to test every day. So if you imagine a lab of 100 different computers, new builds every night, how do you get them up and running? Transitioning from testing to software automation I did it because I didn't want to have to install new software on 100 different computers every day. It kind of got tedious and mind-numbing. And so how do you look at, what is it about your workflow that improves it for you, but also improves it for the team?
Yeah. And it's funny about the piracy thing. I would say definitely a portion of our audience has turned back their clocks on a Windows computer to get Adobe installed at some point in their lives. So we're familiar with that. So as you're working at Apple, you're intern and you get extended a full-time job. And as that kind of is happening, man, Apple's like really blowing up in a lot of consumer ways, like we mentioned. What did that do, I guess, for your career? And like, as that's happening, like, how did Apple change to work at in that same time?
The company got very big, with Apple retail especially, but also with, just the size of the company and the different products everybody's working on. It was a really exciting time. There's the old thing of Dunbar's number. It's the 150 people that you can have a meaningful social relationship with. When you grow like wildfire, you kind of lose that Dunbar's number effect. And so like there are whole teams that you might not even know who they are. So it was kind of things got big really quickly. And being on the younger side, change can be exciting, but change can be scary as well. That's also when I decided to transition roles. And, unfortunately, ultimately, when Steve passed away in end of 2011, that's when I decided to make my first big career pivot as well. And, there's a time when you can stay at an opportunity long enough to enjoy the opportunities that come up and the new experiences. And then there's times when you can stay a little bit too long. It had been building that starting when I was 19 years old, working on this amazing team for over a decade is 10 years too much. And so that was when I made my first jump to a startup company.
You worked at Apple for 10 years before Steve Jobs passed away. That is wild to me.
Yeah. Did you ever get to meet him? Do you have any stories?
Yeah, every year they intended to do kind of an intern presentation where the different executives across the company would come, and Steve and higher executives with their calendars, you never know. I was fortunate for 2 of the years I interned that he did give a presentation, and it was kind of a Q&A format, a little bit like this, but him sharing his life experience at the time. Some of those moments are private, not really public, but learned a lot. And I think the biggest thing was following your passions. He had rejoined Apple in late 90s. He had helped redirect the company. Like hearing someone share like what it means to be committed to an idea and really passionate to drive it forward was really exceptional.
So one of the things we're really wanting to dive into in this episode is some of your lessons in career development and in just general personal professional development. You definitely had a lot of time as program manager, technical lead manager, those types of things. You had a lot of managerial experience overall in all of your adventures, I'd say. For employees out there who want to be better, what were the best employees to work with, the best employees to be managed, the best employees that you would end up saying at the end of the day, yeah, this person, I will vouch for them?
At a base level, I think treating everybody like a peer was a really big kind of catalyst, not only for my career cycle, but like in the teams I worked with as well. Yes, you have a manager. Yes, there is a hierarchy within an organization, but, the people I've really enjoyed working with and the feedback of people who've joined to work with me are, where we truly treated ourselves as peers and we have different skill sets and how do we really complement each other well. And I think when looking in more of an employee manager relationship, it's people who are open to, open communication in the sense of you could be really worried or concerned about something as an employee, and your manager should be your biggest advocate, not your biggest adversary. And so I think, early in my own career cycle, I would see my manager as the person limiting me from the next step or what I wanted to do. And there was something that really pivoted later on where it was, how to have a better communication cycle to be very direct about what it is I'd like to do. And when there's a gap, how to help close that.
I'm curious, do you have any examples specifically of that where you were managing a developer and they came up to you and said, hey, X, Y, and Z needs to happen? I'm just trying to see like what does that actually look like? Somebody's in their job right now and they're saying, I wish I could do something else. How does that look?
Yeah. At base level, it's kind of if it's driven by unhappiness or dissatisfaction, it's really at the core of that first. I think there's this kind of the fork in the road of someone who's super motivated, wants to, do this big transition or acceleration. On the other side, there's people who are like, I'm dissatisfied, burnout's kicked in, some element of that. And it's really helping them navigate that part. At the root of it, for a lot of people, it's like you have your core values and your actions can either complement your core values or deviate from it. So people who come in that situation of like, I'm super burnt out. We worked on this project. It didn't turn out, all the different negative, self-talk and team talk that can happen, but I need to make a big change. And coming from someone who's currently on a sabbatical, I always, advocate for the appropriate big change. And oftentimes, instead of a big change like your job role or your team, it's probably some small daily action that can help get things back on course. So for more of like the tactical example, Wes, it's usually people come very frustrated. They want a big change to happen, but in reality, they didn't get to that point like overnight. And so it's how do you help correct that day by day? It could be how you communicate with them in status and stand-ups, kind of scrum. It could be the work that they're assigned to do and the agency they're given in how to deliver it. A lot of people, they feel like they are being controlled or compelled into doing something. And so how do you give them the control and the agency to deliver their best work?
Yeah, I've always heard that like people don't quit jobs, they quit managers, because like you often see people go nuclear and just quit something. And it's like, well, I bet they were super frustrated and either they didn't try or they were not able to get around what was really bugging them about their job.
Yeah. It's interesting when looking at kind of corporate and startups where I found like, there's the rocket metaphor of, there's a personality that loves to be like launching the rocket into space. 20 people, you and your best friends, doing a startup company, doing a new project within a larger company, accelerated growth, not caring about the collateral damage or casualties along the way. You're just invigorated by the momentum. And then kind of something happens in a startup. It's typically around like a Series A or first product launch or something like that, where you accelerate, but your agency reduces. And your role might shift a little bit. A lot more people join in. So, you have to have real HR, not just your buddy, kind of a thing. And then the last part is you've made it into orbit. You're in space, you're in maintenance mode. The innovation, the energy is not as high, but the effort isn't as high as well. And I found that when people really struggle, it's usually they're in one mode, but they desire to be in a different mode. If you're in maintenance mode, you want to be in bootstrapping mode. If you're in bootstrapping mode, you want some sanity in your life. So you want the next acceleration phase. I find that those kind of step functions tend to be where people gravitate towards.
And then you want to move somebody out of one of those modes that you said it's like small steps. What is that? Do you give them different work? You move them to a different team? I guess it probably depends.
Yeah. I mean, a big believer in like the inner compass. If someone can articulate to others what it is they want, they're more likely to achieve it. And I find that, the first stages is people who can't put the words around it so that they can make sure their manager's aware. They can socialize to people on other teams of like, hey, I want to make a big jump. I went from QA testing to evangelism and product marketing to program management. You don't get there alone. And so I think it's really how you identify like what it is you want and then who's the cohort and the right people to put around you to help achieve it.
Yeah, that tracks so much. I think a lot of times people do get hung up by simply just not knowing what they want. And sometimes you're so clouded by either burnout or just energy in general that like you can't even take a second to step back and even know what you want, which can just further complicate things. You mentioned earlier on that evolving communication style was a big point in which people like really develop their ability to be a good employee somewhere. Do you have any communication tips overall for communicating better, but also like what does that even mean?
Yeah, I think one area is trying to be as succinct as possible. Very early in my career, when I was working on these automation projects, our team got absorbed by a whole new leadership. And I remember having a one-on-one with the new leader and feeling very excited about like all the growth and opportunity. And, she sat me down and was like, "You're awesome. You're kind of like a $20 I found in the wash. I know you're good, but I don't know what to do with you." And then her second piece of advice was, "You need a copy editor of what you are sharing with me is great. I cannot understand it." And so the point about communication, I think in the course of my career after it was how to be able to recap more succinctly to the point of in meetings, even more recently, a huge discussion will happen. And at the end, I'll just recap the top 3 or 5 points and everybody's typically on the same page. Most of the conflict that develops, I find, is basically a difference of perspective. When you recap it back, 2 people aren't communicating the same thing.
Yeah, that tracks. That's it. How do you feel about meetings overall as like a means of communication?
Ooh, super conflicted. I became a remote employee in 2018, pre-pandemic, when we had moved from California to Colorado. And for my personality and lifestyle, like remote is absolutely where I thrive the most. And I think we've learned a lot in both the cadence and content of meetings in pandemic, now post-pandemic or whatever we want to call this current phase, but or kind of redirect a little bit of like, there's an old military phrase that planning is essential, but plans are useless. And I think meetings are about plans more than they're about planning.
Huh.
That's really cool.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Do you think we have too many meetings I guess, I don't know about Apple, but like just in general, do you think there's too many meetings when you talk to people from other companies?
Looking at the slice of the tech industry, absolutely. And I think it's omnipresent in almost every industry right now of a knowledge worker. If you associate a dollar cost to both the time and attendees of a meeting, let's just say even $10, something totally unrealistic, and you start to put the metric into work of how much dollars is this consuming, even at that nominal $10 rate, and you'll begin to realize for the amount of effort, money in this case, that we're using, we're getting very little value out of it. And so I think, by making meetings more focused, reducing the attendees to the stakeholders, I think there's a lot of meeting etiquette that gets brushed under because people want the perception of feeling busy or perception of feeling important.
What do you think about like things like Agile, those types of strategies?
Yeah, I think, Scrum, Kanban, hybrid models and everything, I think as a guiding light, they're exceptional. As a, dogma and a practice, I think they can fall apart, pretty quick in different areas. It depends on the needs of your team. There's no one prescription for a process. And so I think if all the members of a team can speak to, hey, we do Scrum because of, reasons. We do Kanban because reasons. As long as those reasons are the same, I think it's the right process for you and your team.
Yeah, that's interesting. We had asked earlier what the best employees to work with and to have work under you are like. What about like the worst employees? Like the employees that you wouldn't vouch for, what did they do wrong?
Yeah, it's always hard, never to name names, but it's, personality traits of obstructionism, people who are just mad and can't, like, defeatists. They're negative to the point that it drags others down. There's the old HR-ism of the arithmetic order of operation, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponent, et cetera, et cetera. And when you get into, team members that are subtraction and division, that either they subtract, they take away from their output to the team, or division, they take others down with them. Those are really the negative side. And when you talk about a manager, it's how do you transition an employee from addition to multiplication, not just the effort that they can do, but that they multiply around them. And then leadership is kind of that parentheticals and exponent. How can you group the right people together and then, pour gasoline on the fire?
Do you think those people know that they are being that type of person? Like how do you let somebody know that they're a subtractor?
Yep. This is part of good one-on-ones, which I think is really hard, where so many people in management, don't desire, they were kind of that team captain and now they were ascended to the coach, but they really want to play the game still. I think those are kind of the friction point for a lot of good one-on-ones. In any one-on-one, it should really be bi-directional. Once again, a meeting of peers. But how to give constructive feedback is really, the core of that answer. So, hey, Wes, I have some things to share with you. Are you in a good place? Always a check-in first, because the last thing you want to do is deliver bad news when they're in a negative place. It also sets the stage for, hey, if you're not in a good place right now, let's work together so you can be on the same level playing field. And then, recapping back, using their words, like, I want to share some things, but you tell me more honestly, like, what are you seeing in the workplace? What do you think of your performance? And then that way you can have more of a bi-directional conversation. You never want to just be the dump truck and unload the negativity on someone, have them go process it. Usually they're not capable of in the time.
I wanted to ask about hiring as well, because I presume you've probably hired your fair share of developers in your day. My first question is, are you a genius? What does it take to get hired at Apple? And I think the answer is you might be a genius, but often I see people who get jobs at these large companies goes, oh, wow, that's a sweet gig. I'm impressed that they got that. I'm always wondering, like, man, what was it that the manager at Apple saw to hire this person?
Yeah, moving away from Apple more in like the tech industry and startups too, because I think it's universally applicable, is like, you want to find good teammates. There was that old movie, The Internship, about who were the two actors, but
Owen Wilson, maybe.
Yeah. I think there was the paraphrasing the infamous Google test of, like, if you're stuck at the hotel bar, like, or the airport bar, who would you want to have a drink with? I think there's some amount of, you want someone that has some level of domain expertise, or at least acknowledges the domain expertise they need to grow into. So they're coachable and they kind of understand where they are on the talent spectrum, and that they're a net positive to the team. The water boy metaphor of, like, this person might not be the best on the field contributor, but he helps raise the whole team to play at their best.
Yeah, that really tracks. When we were hiring positions for Syntax, that's definitely something that you just think about the whole time, is how well will this person fit in with what we're trying to do, both as a personal teammate. You're going to feel comfortable giving them feedback, receiving feedback from them. Like, all those things I think mattered so much more than people give it credit for, because especially developers are so like, I am smartest at React. I killed my technical interview. Why didn't they give me the job? And it's not always about that.
It's a lot more about the personality as well, be able to suss that out. Is there any questions that you would ask them in these interviews that would either throw up red flags or maybe show you a few green flags?
Yeah, one question I always, typically when I'm in the interview process, I'm more of like the sociology, the team side of things, not like the technical domain expert for a field.
Yeah.
And so I usually give the hard redirect questions of, one of my favorites is, in your own words, what's your definition of work-life balance?
Oh, and what have you heard from that as answers?
Mostly deer in the headlights. It's people who want a pre-canned, sounds good, like, because it's all about, the authentic self you want to portray rather than the authentic self you feel inside. And so I think a lot of people I do time boundaries, I carve out this, or it's very like something they've heard in like a TED Talk before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I give my answer and you tell me what you think?
Please.
All right. So my thought of work-life balance is that I finish off my day job and I am still excited to do other things in my life. I want to dabble in hardware technology. I want to go to the gym. I want to spend time with my family. And if I'm doing well in my day job, I feel like I'll have good energy for that in my off time.
Mm-hmm.
Do I get hired?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Follow-up question of, is that the first time like you've really thought about it, whether on the moment or like, a lot of the words were great.
I've never thought about that before, but as soon as you said that, I thought like, what is it to me? Like, obviously I have nothing at stake here. I'm not trying to get a job, so maybe that has some flow into it. But like, I do think about like, what does work-life balance mean?
Yeah. So if you think about like a funnel, for the top of the funnel, the first response, awesome. All the core elements were there. And I think as you sit with something, especially something as important like work-life balance, you distill it down and eventually you get to the elevator pitch that both sounds authentic, but also represents what you want to share.
And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right. I think that authenticity is super important. We've talked a little bit about like passion in your career. I know for some folks they don't know what they want, but maybe they're like, what am I passionate about? Is my passion even important to getting a job? So how do you feel about that relationship between being passionate about something and making it your career?
Yeah, the balance of aspiration and attainability. The idea of something versus what would that really feel like. And I'm going to mispronounce it, but there's a Japanese phrase of ikigai or ikigai. It's IKIGAI. And it's kind of 4 Venn diagrams of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what pays you. And kind of the life philosophy behind it, as I understand it, is the central point of that, the balancing point, is kind of ikigai. And so oftentimes if you're struggling with something, you're like, oh, I want to be earning more. But it's like, does the world need you to earn more? It's a way to do checks and balances. And the other side effect of that is people think it's one thing. Like there is a perfect job out there that is ikigai. And kind of Wes, to your comment earlier, it's really the sum of many parts. Like I want to be motivated and go work out. I want to spend time with my family. I want to be motivated to this career path. And so when you look at it as kind of a balancing point, it's, are you putting the chess pieces in the right quadrant? There are times work might be super exciting. And it's that hard conversation with family of, hey, I need to spend more time at work. I won't be around for these things. Like, but that's the balancing point, is that it's never a static point. It's something that's always fluid and evolving.
Yeah. By the way, you were pronouncing it correctly. Ikigai, definitely correct. So
that's beautiful. I'm already working on a meme for Ikigai where it says JavaScript in the middle. What you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you could be paid for.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is very on brand for US. Yeah.
And Wes, to your point earlier too about like, the top of the funnel, I think a lot of the same elements you shared are actually very similar to my own. And so as you talk about these things with a lot of people, you kind of refine it down. And by way of example, the place I've come to on work-life balance is to identify and honor your personal and professional values.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you think about these things, Topher. It's always one of my favorite parts about talking to you is that you always say, I don't know if it's just like metaphors or what, you always seem to have a great way to like put things into perspective. I think your career has evolved in such an interesting way. I'm curious, like, so we have a lot of people who listen to this show that are trying to break in, or they're in a job and they don't know what to do. I guess I want to get into a little bit of like, for these people, what is out there to take them to the next level, to get them a job, to get them that promotion, or if they even want a promotion? What types of tips do you have for people to actually grow within their career path?
part one is always being clear on what the goal is. When you're first starting out, that goal is wildly different than you've been a 10, 15, 20-year veteran at something and are looking to accelerate. So I think being, once again, able to articulate what the goal is. I think there's a little bit of the apprehension when you're first starting out of here's all the barriers in my way. And I think what's beautiful about software, especially web development, is there are none. You can go spin up, any project you want, go contribute to an open source project that already exists. Like there's ways to just start. And to that point about kind of aspiration and attainability, so many people starting out like the idea of something, especially in the tech industry. Compensation tends to be a driver for a lot of people. I see my friend who started making these apps and, overnight millionaire, all the different anecdotal stories. But then the question is like, is that right for me? Like, is this the type of work I think I'd enjoy? And it's easy to analyze it from the sidelines, but it is actually easy just to jump in and do it.
Yeah. You know what? I think about that a lot where I know, Wes, you probably have this too, but being a developer educator in this space, I have a massive amount of either friends or people I've known, old coworkers, or even family that you're like, I'm thinking about getting into tech. Like, what do you recommend? What do I do? And like 99% of those people, they actually try it. They give a code test, a challenge, and then it's like, all right, I'm out. But the 1% of those people that can take it and turn it into something like really, really do.
Yeah. So kind of what you're talking about is the development life cycle a little bit of, people who can take something from the idea to a shipped product and to iterate continuously for it. And I think your habit tracker is an awesome example of this, of build something you'd want to use when you're first starting out, because even if your customer base is one for the life cycle of the product, you've achieved success. And I think so many people think they need to do such a big project to start or something that would be impressive if they're applying to another company. But if you build something you would actually use, that's where, really things start to move.
Yeah. You have something to show for it. You have something to hang your hat on. You're currently on a sabbatical. What does that actually mean or entail? And why might somebody take a sabbatical?
Yeah. I jokingly say preemptive burnout of there's times, back to the part about your values and kind of realizing there's certain actions you've taken that have deviated from your values. I was in this most recent role, had a really long commute between Denver and Boulder, Colorado, which is about an hour there and about 90 minutes home. And just, it wasn't working out over time. And so for me, taking a sabbatical is, reconnecting with the personal identity of my family, my partner, really taking a break to understand, we have this amount of time. One key aspect of taking a sabbatical is just financial viability, making sure there's some coins in the piggy bank. So when you take the hammer to it, you're not stressed about, if I'm not professionally employed at this time, how can I make the best of it while not feeling that stress upon you? But I always encourage people, whether it's at some point in your career, at every point you can take a step back, you learn so much about yourself. It's so easy to put something on the backlog and say, oh, whether it's, chores and maintenance around the house or personal development work. I'm a huge advocate for therapy to understand more of what you think and what you feel. But there's so much you can suppress when you're in the grindstone of a big project. And so for me, taking a sabbatical, this is kind of my second major sabbatical in my career, is really about self-discovery. And every time I've come out of something, it's been to something fundamentally different.
Yeah, that is, like we were saying, sometimes you don't know what you want because there's too many factors weighing down on you. There's too much weighing, and to take a step back and be able to do that, that's got to be pretty amazing. I know, one of the things you're doing is working a lot with your kids right now. I wonder about your thoughts on teaching technical things to kids, or just in general, what kind of tech does somebody who worked at Apple basically, not your entire career, but a good chunk of your career. What does somebody who does that do to teach their kids with tech?
Yeah, it's such an amazing time to be alive, and especially as a parent now of as a child of the 80s, oh man, I wish we had this instead of, Speak and Spell or, all the different light years ahead of what is available in the STEM and STEAM curriculum in most schools these days. And, it's been interesting to see, taking a step back of, once again, too, the technologies or products I've developed that maybe not super thrilled about, the impact they've had on kids, or, having worked on iPads, now to see my kid glued to them is ooh, better take that away and enable screen time real quick. But, so I always look at it as technology for good. And as someone who grew up with learning differences and different challenges along the way, I can see the huge benefit of technology to help people, break through different barriers they wouldn't be able to otherwise. So how to apply that towards not just kids, but adults as well. I think so many people, the job market is not pretty right now in the tech industry. And people are looking to either change careers or transition in roles and feeling a little bit stuck. And I think there's no shortage of, learning opportunities out there. It's just like, how do you get to step one? And so back to your question about like for kids, it's giving them like a step one and a step two, but giving them the environment that they can find step three and beyond.
That's really interesting. Landon and I, my son, for the people we're building a video game right now. So we're both in Godot. And it is funny to try to teach a 7-year-old how to work with an application building thing like Godot. He's just like, why don't we have him do this now? The character do this. I'm like, well, we have to program that first. Let's figure out how to do that. Let's get into it. And then like just to see his brain work, to be like, oh, things don't just exist out of nowhere. We have to create them. We have to program them. We have to understand how this thing works. I think it's really been, even though he's not coding, I think it's been changing for him in terms of how he sees things happen. I know at one point you had worked on self-driving cars. This is an off-the-board question, but I'm curious about what your vibe is on the self-driving cars.
Yeah,
I think about this all the time.
Worked at an amazing startup company called Aurora, which kind of did self-driving vehicles to begin and pivoted to autonomous trucks. And so I kind of distinguish between trucking versus like ride sharing. And, I think it will take a long time for ride sharing, both from a regulatory and like a cultural perspective, to be like everybody's comfortable. Like San Francisco had that honking incident with Waymo recently. There'll always be a headline. But, as someone who also was in a very traumatic car accident as a young kid, human drivers are not safe. We have this perception of, what safety is. And I think that was a unique part of my career and just technology development, to look at how can we build tools to make things safe again. And so trucking, I think, will be more widespread earlier. But, if you go to San Francisco or Chandler, Arizona, like there's places you can go now and ride in a self-driving vehicle. And it's uncanny the first time you do it. And then it's very uneventful because it's just like you have a virtual chauffeur that drops you off. So it's kind of a weird, exciting, then anticlimactic experience to be a rider.
I think about this all the time. I want them to make the car out of the black box of the airplane and then just put my kid inside of it and then have that take him everywhere. So that way he never has to be a 16-year-old driver. That's my goal in life.
The safety and redundancy systems and how you develop. I mean, it comes a lot from aviation and rocket science. So like, you're not just building a web app and shipping it over to an SRE team to go deploy it. Like this is a very end-to-end system, and you have to think about safety as the paramount goal for everybody.
Yeah, wow.
What did you specifically do when you worked on the self-driving tech?
Yeah, so this was started in 2015 when deep neural networks, DNNs, were all the new rage. And training data was a huge segment of the industry. And so my role was program management and corporate development to build large, high-quality data sets. When transitioning to Aurora, had a larger, role there that really enjoyed. But if you think about it, you're educating a neural network, a machine learning system, from the ground up, so that you have to teach it both, true positives, false negatives, all the different taxonomy, the different objects you need to identify. Failure is really bad in those cases. And so if you look at a small detector on your phone doing object detection, is worlds apart from, a vehicle doing it at such high speed and low latency.
That's fascinating, that whole area. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was going to say, is working on a team like that where safety is so paramount, is that stressful to the team to work on, knowing that there's such high stakes?
It can be, but as mentioned, like a lot of like the safety critical work of like aviation and other industries, we're building on existing foundations of how do you make sure in a regulated, highly controlled safety environment, that foundation makes you feel really affirmed that like, I'm not going to put in the wrong semicolon and that's going to land on a vehicle. Like the number of steps between an individual commit and on a vehicle are, almost infinite. But that's what the whole process of a safety framework's about, is because you can think about it that as an engineer, if I'm concerned that, if I do this, a catastrophic event might happen, that can induce bias in the actual work I'm doing. I could be overprotective of things, which in turn could make things run worse. So there's a lot of making sure that you have a safety framework that supports doing the right thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been involved obviously now in machine learning for a while. I know that you use LLMs, personally. What do you think that looks like for somebody who's looking to get into tech? I know there's so much negativity about AI taking our jobs. Do you feel like that greatly evolves the career path going forward?
It's definitely made an impact. How measured that impact will be, I think we're writing that in pages of history today. There's an old phrase of if technology can make your job easier, it can also make it irrelevant. And while that's been a joke, I think now we're kind of seeing that where sections of industry, a paralegal, an accountant, things that are highly professional and credentialed professions can be done by certain LLMs. I think the trust factor is still something we're acculturating to of when I'm getting an answer from insert favorite LLM here, like I want to plan a trip for me and a family where, all the different criteria, it's amazing for things like that. But we still have the rationalization effect or hallucination effect, as some people like to call it, that is this answer real or is it fabricated based on a limited understanding?
Yeah. How much longer do you think that's going to, I know you're not a soothsayer here, but like, when do you think that barrier ends up disappearing?
Candidly, in certain areas, we're there. I think, people look at the capability of crossing the finish line in one area versus everything's across the finish line. Do I want an LLM to operate on me as a surgeon? Nope. Do I want it to make a much better recommendation than anything I've ever had before? Absolutely.
Yeah, I get that. I know there's certainly a lot of things that I do use it for that I do. The trust sometimes isn't 100%, but I think that's one good part about being a developer, especially if you're using it for coding, is that your abilities are there to validate that trust or to, filter out what could be something detrimental that you're adding to your code base. I know coding seems like a ripe thing to be encompassed by AI. What do you think developers should do to make themselves stand out or even be relevant?
I think it's interesting. Maintainability comes up in a very big way. Of just because an LLM or a Copilot, insert name of product here, can generate something for you, does not mean it's the ideal solution to deploy. And much like having the intern refactor the piece that's been in production for 20 years, there's certain things you don't touch because, of the mission criticality to whatever your product is. And so I think for day-to-day kind of work, I think our inspiration of how to move forward with a problem in engineering, excellent for brainstorming. I think when it comes to not just implementation, but deployment into a production environment, oftentimes I think people rewrite a whole bunch. That they'll have, their LLM, generate something for them and then refactor it. And then it's that, opportunity cost of if you'd just written it yourself, would it have taken less time? So I think that gap is what people are focused on right now.
Interesting. Yeah, totally.
Or from a different lens, people who are into no code I think there's a lot of interesting application to extend, no code IDEs and frameworks to, actually have functional code that they can better understand and make cool products. You might have an idea, but not the capability to go implement. And I think the amount of ideas that can be accelerated through that is phenomenal.
Yeah. The amount of people that is no code as a gateway drug to actual code is amazing, right? I don't blame people for doing that type of thing. Even an Excel spreadsheet is no code, right? But at a certain point you realize, this is so complex and fragile. I think I want to learn a little bit of code now. And I have the whole mindset for it now that I've been working on this.
Yeah. I started with no code stuff. I mean, Dreamweaver, or there was some Adobe software where we dragged everything onto a grid, was no code to an extent. And again, it was the gateway. Yeah, I know. Totally. Right. So Topher, to sum up kind of what we're talking about on career development, do you have any final statements here on career development stuff that could wrap this up in summation?
Yeah, especially for those who are just starting out or looking to make a transition into tech, into a new field within tech, is at times you can be your own biggest enemy. And it's so much easier to start than, oftentimes we make it up to be in our head. So when looking at starting a side project, learning a new skill, doing something that once again is for you as the primary customer, I think these are all great ways to better discover and explore what it is you want to do. And naturally over time, I think those will connect the dots to the right team and the right products.
Nice. Are you familiar with Kaizen, Topher?
Not so much.
So
can you share more?
We're about to drop our second Japanese business philosophy on this podcast.
Yeah.
Kaizen is a Japanese term for continual small improvement. There's a book, I think it's called like One Small Step, Kaizen or something. Definitely worth your time because it resonates a lot with what you're saying. Paul Copplestone of Supabase told me about it. And man, it definitely fits in with a lot of what you're saying about this. It is easier to start one small step here and there, and you can make a big difference. You worked on light field cameras. This is off the wall question. What is a light field camera?
A light field camera is capturing an image from multiple centers of perspective. So Stanford University had developed an array camera, so a big wall of cameras effectively. And when you look at capturing an image at that scale, you can actually shift, and create a three-dimensional image. So this is very early computational photography. But you could put this wall next to bushes and see through them. There's amazing things that you could do. Wow. And so the company Lytro was founded to miniaturize that technology into a single camera. It was a consumer camera to start, but it allowed you to take one picture that you could refocus after the fact. Everything was 3D. This was in 2012, 2013. So 3D TVs were all the buzz. And I think, that's an example of an amazing technology and a great team, but the product didn't really fit within the environment at the time. And so as a lifelong passionate photographer, it really resonated for me to have a technology and a camera company, but, a lot of good life lessons from a startup company, how they, rose and ultimately fell as well.
I remember this product, seeing this photo. When you had said Lytro before, I didn't put it together, but I do remember when this came out. That was it was kind of like black magic to see that as a field of view.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah, the focus come in and out. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
I want that for just my cameras right here, Yeah. If I go over here, or if you want to pan into the side, wouldn't it be nice just to whoop?
One of the synthetic depth of field was actually one of the big effects that, you were always shooting at effectively f2, so very shallow depth of field, and you can synthetically increase the depth of field using real pixels data. So phenomenal technology. I think selling a third camera to photographers where their first camera is like an SLR, their second camera is a smartphone, there's not enough room in the camera bag for kind of a third camera in a lot of cases.
Yeah, now the iPhone with this cinema recording, you can change the focus point at any given point in editing.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's being done by recording just multiple streams at once?
Yeah, a lot of it is just by stereoscopy, having two cameras with overlapping fields of view. And then, it's how effectively spatial video works in a lot of areas too, with a LiDAR sensor where you can get depth information. One of the big features of visionOS 2, as a fellow visionOS owner, is, photos can actually take photos you've taken traditionally, 2D images, and use computational photography to make them spatial photos. I don't know if you've had a chance to do it yet on the developer betas, but it's amazing. Especially as a parent, you do relive the moment that you wouldn't otherwise.
I know people, if people haven't used it, they wouldn't know, but the spatial media is such a killer feature of the Vision Pro overall for me. Turning photos spatially is like an emotional experience. Or I recorded my son singing in his first grade class, and I recorded that as a spatial video, and then I could do that before I even had the Vision Pro, and then I watched it back on the Vision Pro, and it was just man, it is such a cool experience to really feel like you're not like you're there, but you're experiencing something that's real rather than just a video of it. Man, it's just such cool stuff.
Can I ask you real quick about the stuff that's in your background? So anyone not watching the video right now, there's a bunch of cube squares that has some Minecraft stuff on it and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, over here, so my son Barry actually and Scott's son Landon are kind of really good friends from kindergarten and first grade. So that's kind of one of the small world connections here. But my son is all the things Minecraft. And these are little Pixu, Divoom, LED boards. And the moment he saw that it could be Minecraft, it was all the things Minecraft. So
yeah, Landon is so into Minecraft right now, but the funniest thing about Landon is he just makes up so much stuff about it. He'll be like, Dad, did you know that I could kill the unicorn on this planet in Minecraft? I'm like, I don't think that's a thing. I don't even know where you're coming up with that.
My kids are getting into it recently as well. I'm learning all about obsidian and all these, and they ask me questions like I know everything about it, and it's hilarious. We have to go look it up.
Especially from a parent perspective too. It's funny, Landon and Bear think they're in the same world, but they're both playing locally on their own device. But it's like, I left this thing for you in the loot box. Did you see it? And it was like, I don't have the heart to tell them, like, guys, that's not possible, but it's adorable.
Landon and I had a world that we were doing together, and I branched his off just because I didn't, he was playing creative and whatever. And he's like, Dad, I did this to your house. I blew up your house. I'm like, you didn't blow up my house. I'm sorry, but same deal. I haven't told him, but I think we do have to get an actual server going at some point, because that would be a lot of fun. Actually, I have one more question about Apple stuff before we go. What was something, just because we got you on here, what was something wild that happened while you were working at Apple that you could share? Just a wild experience for you.
I think, going back to the theme of like starting something, making it real, and like seeing people use it. When Apple Retail first started, which is around the same time I joined the company, like the ability to work on something so hard and then go walk into a random shopping mall and see people like using it for the first time is like one of the coolest things ever. And for me, kind of in private, working on Vision Pro for so long, like to really demo it to people or have them go into an Apple store is like that weird like Christmas morning effect of like, it brings me a lot of internal motivation and joy to see something I've put so much energy into and so large numbers of teams and people, and to have it, have that moment. A lot of products are judged over time, iPhone being a good example of that. But it's to really enjoy that moment of when people experience something and go, wow, this is just cool. So,
yeah, I do feel like that is a thing with Vision Pro, especially that like when people really get to use it or experience it for its strengths and the reality of it, they really see how incredible it is. So yeah, it's just a really cool product. I think for me personally, in that regard, using it on the airplane was like the biggest thing in the world for me, to be able to code with a giant screen on the beach in the airplane. And I had RoboCop over here, which RoboCop, incredibly violent movie. I can watch it on the airplane and not have to worry about little kids seeing 1,000 squibs go off in a boardroom shootout scene. So it's like, for me, that was just such a cool moment to be like, this is really transformative in a lot of ways. And I'm excited for more people to experience that. So now, since we're wrapping up here, this is the part of the show where we get into sick picks and shameless plugs. Topher, did you come with sick picks and shameless plugs?
I did. So 2 days ago, I took the leap on getting a 3D printer.
You
after
did?
Much debate and I had one like in 2010, the MakerBot Thingomatic, I think it was called, but early stuff. And oh man, I mean, it is nonstop, fidget toys and everything. Like I had to turn it off so the audio didn't bleed in here for the call. But this printer has been running nonstop for 24 hours or 48 hours, and it's been super fun to learn something new.
Which one did you get?
You got the Bamboo Labs P1S. I can send a link for the show notes. But there's an automated material system. It can do, multicolor printing, and, it's a bit apprehensive. One, they're not cheap, but it's, diving into something new. But just once again, that thrill of kind of doing something new and it's been fun. And the kids absolutely love it. It's, Santa's workshop at home.
Man,
that's cool.
This is going to be a thing now. Topher and I were talking about this weekend, or I guess it was last weekend, maybe even. Mm-hmm. Man, it's exciting to hear that you went with it. This, I bet Landon will be stoked to check it out. He has such lofty ideas. We were going to get him this like cheapo 3D printing pen for Christmas that just like, it's like dragging. And he thinks like, I'm going to be able to make all of my toys with this. And we're like, I got to set expectations, man. It's not going to do that for you, but maybe a real 3D printer. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. It was actually a web app that kind of tipped the scales. Like this has been in a family, like there's always like, hey, dad wants to get the 3D printer. Oh, that's nice. Mm-hmm. And it was bento3d.design is a really cool kind of reactive web app that it allows you to create an interactive bento box. So one of the big challenges I always have is like camera batteries or insert name of random thing here. And you can make the completely unique custom bento box and just download the STL file to the printer. Wow. And, in our kitchen, we have like, whatever off-the-shelf cutlery organizer. And I went to my partner, I'm like, we could just make our own that actually works instead of the one we've been struggling with for 10 years. And that was the pitch. Like, that's what sold it. We're getting a 3D printer today.
Yeah, it actually fits the drawer. Yeah.
Totally. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I've been watching this for a while, and I've been on the cusp of getting a 3D printer for probably 15 years now. And it's almost one of the ones where if you're trying to visualize what this is, it's like a CSS grid where you can infinitely add rows and columns and split things up, and it will just figure it out. So if you do have a drawer that you want to perfectly section off, that's what it is. And
wow,
I want to do it.
Who made this? This is a great web app.
This web app really solves the precision problem. Like, you can go download, Blender, any app you want to go do, but like by the time you actually print it, it's not millimeter accurate. And the above and beyond the design of this website, it's the fact that everything's millimeter accurate is really cool.
This thing rules. This is a really cool web app.
Japanese developer, Shuntaro Naka. I'm not even going to try, but man, Japanese, they're taking over this episode today.
Wow. Yes. Wow. Cool. This is sick, Topher. Yeah, stoked to see what you guys end up making with that thing. What about shameless plugs? Is there anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, so speaking of doing new things, I've been attempting to start a YouTube channel for probably a decade. And so I have youtube.com/Topher Martini with 0 videos and 1 follower, 1 subscriber. So in like the weeks ahead, I really want to continue conversations like these and, share more of what I've been able to learn through my career trajectory to help others. So that's one place I hope to do it.
Yeah, and give Topher a follow because he's one of the wisest people I get to talk to on a regular basis. So I sincerely appreciate you getting to come on the show, Topher, and like share some of that with our audience. Because I know when we chat all the time, it always feels like I'm picking something up left and right. So thank you so much for coming on the show today and getting to share that with the audience. So yeah, go follow Topher on YouTube. We'll have the links for all this stuff in the show. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for the conversation.
Of course, anytime, man.